And I think, yes, we're live. We have the orange lozenge that says live. We are live with Chris Montoya, and this is a big hangout as far as I'm concerned. And you just have to listen on. You have to believe me, folks. This is going to be a really good one because lots of detail, lots of advanced typology in this. Right. Okay. So the first thing is, if we start the slide. No, actually, we shouldn't start the slide presentation because I've got to ask him a question. And the question is, so Chris, could you tell us about your studies and your career?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me here, Ben. It's a delight to be here, and I really am super excited to talk with you today about just a little bit of knowledge I have around type. And I'm trying to be a bit humble because I have a lot of respect for other people in the field that have come before me. But my studies, my background is in adult education and adult learning. It's also in fine arts and some spiritual studies. And last but not least, it's also around the world of type and typology. I had done my certification to administer the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator back in 2008. And then I decided to deepen my knowledge because I wanted to really take the personality type models out to the training world and make a big impact with people, teams, organizations. So I met and mentored with Dr. Linda Berens, who is a mentor and colleague of mine. At the time, she was with Inner Strength, and now she's with the Linda Berens Institute. I've also been faculty with her. I've done some training with her. So we've gone out and we've done a lot of self-discovery courses where we teach people through the different type lenses, and we help them self-discover who they are through that process. And so it reveals itself rather than trying to take an inventory, which at best guess is 70 to 80% anyway. So from there, Linda and I got interested in working together to come up with the third style lens. We have temperament, we have interaction styles or behavior styles or DISC. And now we were looking at cognition, the 8 cognitive functions, and how to put that together in 4 simple styles which we now call intentional styles, because those are about the patterns of intention that we have in our thinking. Had no idea before I met you, that there was such a thing called quadras in socionics. In fact, it was sort of like Greek and hieroglyphics to me when I first heard of socionics. So please be kind if you're watching this video to me, because I'm still relatively new in studying socionics and trying to get a handle on it. I jokingly told Ben earlier on the call that I do think that socionics is for smarties, because a lot of people who can understand the hieroglyphics and the level of distinction here, I'm not a math person, so please go easy on me today. So that's what I would say in terms of my career.
Oh wow! Could you let us know how you arrived at the intentional styles? Because I think that socionics did a sort of more of a philosophical point of view, where they sort of like went, well, they have these functions, therefore, so sort of like went deductive. I think you had more of a scientific, inductive, research-based method.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. It's funny that you should bring that up, because in the research that I've done, and preliminary findings tell me that your type style has a bit to do with how you will approach problem solving, whether it's inductive or deductive. But there's nothing that we have that's super conclusive about that just yet. I just wanted to mention that. We wanted to produce something. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, the last thing I heard was preliminary findings, and then you went out for about 10 to 20 seconds.
Oh, so sorry about that. Yeah, so when we started the research for this, I wanted to be very clear that I wasn't letting anything else influence us. So we got a group of people who self-discovered, and they were very clear on their type, and we did interviews with them. And those interviews, we looked at what it was like to be them. And so there was a lot of personal data in those interviews. I then took those interviews, I pulled them apart so that I could find each individual thought, whether it was a sentence, a paragraph, or an exposition. And I was looking at what are the common threads of the people who share the same preferred preferences. And, you know, so for example, INTJ, ENTJ, ISFJ, and ESFJ, excuse me, ESFP and ESFP and ISFP. So we were looking at what do those four styles share in common based off of what they were saying to us in those interviews. That wasn't temperament, that wasn't behavior, but was truly an indication of cognition. I think we lost Ben. It looks like it's still recording, so I guess I'll keep going and maybe he'll join me. I'm not quite sure, but let's see. So I was talking a little bit about the cognitive styles, and as this continues to go forward, I still see live stream on my screen. Those particular styles were, I took those interviews, I dissected them, I looked at those variables, I tried to find the common themes, and from there, we put together the intentional styles. And we saw some patterns that we distilled into what are the core characteristics of those traits, of those styles. What do they share? What's important about them? What defines them that makes them unique from the other type lenses? So from there, it looks like Ben is trying to communicate with me. So from there, we took those four styles and we wanted to proof them out. We wanted to make sure that we were hitting the mark on those styles, right? So we went to our audiences, Linda's audiences of participants in previous courses, and we asked them, could you give us a sense of feedback on these? And so it's been about 5 years in the making that we've come up with these styles. We've done training at the Association for Psychological Type International and also some European organizations in that process. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback. And I've got people who have told us that the styles have made a difference in clarifying their type codes. So, so hopefully that answers that question. And I'm going to see if we can try and get Ben back.
Может, я тогда твои наушники возьму? А где твои наушники?
Hello?
Right. Wow, I'm back. Blimey.
Hi.
Wow.
Hi.
Yeah, that's this weird crash. I think you being here will help with the connection. I don't know what the heck happened. Were you here talking to Chris? Were you like on your own? Yeah.
Okay. No,
Oh, it's
I
back.
just joined. I was trying to, but
Wow, we had that
yes.
weird crash.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, like 3 people's dodgy connections can make one good one.
I just kept talking. I don't know what came out, but I
Oh,
just kept talking. So.
I think it's you mentioned something about you mentioned ESFP and then maybe ENFP, something like you were talking about the intentional styles. So that's they're Chris's equivalent of the quadras, Maria.
Pardon me, what did you say?
Chris is talking about the intentional styles, and they're his equivalent of the quadras, but he got to them using an inductive scientific approach, and he's just explaining how he did that. And you could start again if you want, Chris. For the benefit
I'm
of
happy
Maria.
to.
Okay.
Hi, Maria. So what we did was we looked at we did interviews with people who had self-discovered their personality type. In other words, we took them through a process where we introduced all of the different components to them, and they said, "Oh, this is how I fit into this. Like, this is me. Like, if my natural expression, this is me." So rather than giving them a test and having them go into categories through the test and using the test to verify, we do use that occasionally, but more so we take them through the process of self-discovery. So the people who participated in the interviews basically self-discovered their type and were very clear that their type was their type. So when we did the interviews, we were pretty sure that, you know, if somebody said that they were INTP, we know for sure that they were INTP because that's what their self-discovery led them to, and they were pretty crystal clear about it. So we did the interviews on what it was like to be them, and we took those interviews and I dissected every single piece of those interviews, and I looked at people who shared the same the same preferred processes. So, for example, all the SFJs and NTPs were put together in one category, which you guys call quadras.
Yep.
And at the time, I had no idea what that was. And so I was looking for actual patterns in language that were very specific that all 4 styles shared. Because if I could understand what people were talking about, and at least the way that they were talking, I realized that all cognition can be found. In other words, the artifact of cognition is not action, it's not volition, it's speech. So when we think, we usually just talk. So we go from thought to speech, thought to speech. So that said, we started to then take those patterns and sort them and exclude anything that was temperament related, exclude anything that was behavior style related, and we found some really key patterns that each of the 4 quadras, if you will, had. So for example, there was an intention that each of the 4 quadras had that expressed in their language. Even though it wasn't overt, it was subtle, it was not spoken so clearly, it was implied. And so there's an implied language to cognitive styles or intentional styles.
Oh. Have you okay. Maria will speak when she wants to. She might have some things going on in the background.
I was gonna say that that's something that really rings the bell because the EIE type is kind of using their launch function to sort information out, and analyzing speech patterns is very, very much the EIE.
Maria, Chris doesn't know the 3-letter code, so if you like use you know the MBTI codes. If you use the MBTI codes or the functions. Yeah, I think she was talking about ESFJ. Sorry, ENFJ. ESFJ. Sorry, ENFJ.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. She'll have some gold later. Okay, so you've talked about. You don't want to talk about anything more about yourself, or? Okay, maybe.
No, not
okay,
really.
Gotcha. No, I think
like
Mira can hear us all the while. She can hear all the while. It's just that I think she might have some artisan children. I'm not sure.
Ah. Nice.
Some of them are young artisan children. Okay. So if we do the share screen thing, let's hope I don't. Right.
Yeah.
That's the share screen. Oh, right, you're back, Maria. So you were going to say something about ENFJs, I think.
Yeah, I said the thing about INFJ, what I was going to say is that they pay a lot of attention to the language because of their launch TI.
Mm.
So typing people according to their speech pattern in accordance with that.
It's a good observation. I didn't think about that, but it's interesting. Thank you.
Right. So this is also an opportunity. This is the world premiere of the English language version of Viktor's INFJ profile, and it's all nice and not only that, it's an SVG file, so I can really zoom in and it'll be nice and sharp. So Chris, how does that match you, the NI?
It does. Yep, I was going through there and I was to myself thinking yes on all of those bullet points. And it's interesting that the last one says it prefers hints and allegories to direct statements because I am a direct communicator outwardly, but what comes in I would prefer a softer language. So it was just an interesting statement for me. That one really was a little bit of an eye-opener.
How about you, Maria? How does that connect with you? Okay. Well, she'll speak when she is able. Yeah. Right. Well, translation. A lot better than Google Translate. Now here's a tricky one. So what do you think of this? Because this is where the model. It's like this is where the MBTI audience is. What? FI? FI is next? What? I'm getting out of this hangout. I'm not watching this anymore. So Chris, how are you?
I almost did that myself, so I totally understand it. I'm trying to be open-minded to this and really get a sense of this because I really feel like I do not use introverted feeling very well at all. It's really, really difficult for me to use introverted feeling in a positive way. So being open-minded to what you have written here, one of the things that I really enjoyed was when I read the first 3 bullet points on this. Yeah, I couldn't say that they were that far off for me, you know. Like, for instance, the keep things pleasant in a circle and stays away from rude, unpleasant people. And anybody who knows me would know that that is a characteristic that is true, which surprised me that it was there and not under extroverted feeling, but under closer inspection, I do see that it could be a function of introverted feeling. Yeah. And the one thing for me that was sort of a little bit of a zing, Ben, was the last one. Can show resentment towards someone but won't hold a grudge. And that is true, but that we just don't forget. It's like, and I'm not trying to speak for all INFJs, I'll say I just don't forget. Like, I have a situation in my head that happened 1.5 years ago to me, and it was a bit difficult. And that person in my head, well, I don't actually harbor resentment, there's still an emotional charge there of inequity and lack of integrity, and that's sort of just, well, that's part of introverted feeling, and so that does ring true for me. It's just I can't let that go for some reason. So it's not a grudge per se, but I definitely have some resentment there, and so yeah.
So sometimes I won't interrupt you, but I might write something in the side. So when you said that about not forgetting it, that made me think: are you an Enneagram 4?
You know, I don't know enough about Enneagrams to comment on that, and I have a good friend of mine who's INFJ who studies Enneagram, so I might be overdue for a call to him.
I think maybe INFJs love the Enneagram. So, but what we could do here is sort of like have a different view on the same thing. Who'd have thunk it? An INTP that likes to have a different view on the same thing. So if we go to NI, so if we have a look at how, so Viktor will call it T for intuition of time, and so he sort of contrasts it. So he has INFJ will have it like this sort of T plus. Does that match?
Yes, it does match, especially the hopefulness about the future, and sometimes it's, well, if I look at the other T, the minus T, doesn't match at all for me, really. Very rarely.
Do you think that matches INTJ?
Oh yeah.
Well,
my opinion, yes.
I would agree. The other T I can't use at all, and sometimes it makes whatsoever because I cannot predict any negative outcomes of anything.
I was going to say, for me, when I read about being hopeful, there is a part, and I'm wondering if it's a different block than this one, where suddenly there's worry about how the world is going to fall apart around me. And maybe jumping the gun here a little bit. So I was looking for it in the negative T, INTJ lower end, but I don't see it there. So I think it's probably more of extroverted sensing for me.
Yeah, and I'll remind people that Viktor has he has it like these can change depending on someone's like circumstances, like if they're getting down, like they can flip. And so it's like it's an INTP that will come up with all of these like elegant structures, but then he will build in his rigidly defined areas of doubt and uncertainty, which is a Hitchhiker's reference. Right. So if we then have, because we also have a look at FI or Victor or Socionics calls it R for ethics of relations. So I think yours is you're going to be R minus. So I think this is saying you might open up a can on someone. No, keeping others at a distance, being suspicious to the good. This is specifically though for ISFP. Do you think that fits ISFP?
I do. Especially in relationships that I have had with ISFP, friends, family, or otherwise. Yeah, what's interesting for me is that this is an area where ISFP and INFJ, for at least my INFJ-ness, clashed. It took a lot of energy to manage the relationship in that respect, because we both exhibit those characteristics.
That's interesting. I'm just going to have a quick look for that relationship. The INFJ. Oh, 8 to 5. 8. Oh, they're your benefactor. The ISFP. they have a little bit of an edge over you.
Yep.
But
Always
do you
have.
admire them in do you admire them in some ways?
Oh, sure,
Or,
sure. They're very enterprising. They will find clever ways around obstacles in a way that an STP would not. And so, yeah, and even there is a strong difference for me in an ESFP versus an ISFP. You know, there's so in some ways the ISFP and I have similar. What's the right word? Maybe an approach to hold people at a distance until we really get a sense of them. But what they do with the relationship and what I do with it are two different things. And that's really where I think maybe it could fall apart, or we really have to work very hard at keeping it in check. And that's just, I know that about ISFP and myself.
well,
So that's good.
Maybe what we could do in future is, if we, I don't know if you're up for a second hangout, not necessarily today, but where we could talk about how you relate to the other types. Because Maria and I and Crystal are going through all of the intertype relations. And Maria knows it super in depth. She knows the different levels. So if we go back to the, oh yeah, we need to give people sort of a heads up. What's going on with this model? Let's explain things a bit. So Chris, you get the externalities internalities thing, don't you?
I get a sense of it. I do understand the outward towards society versus more inward and towards oneself. I guess that's what I interpret it to be.
I see it as, especially with like INTP, is at a distance they can be quite cold. But now when he talks about his territory, I'm sort of thinking, and then what I'm based on for the pro, it's like when the INTP is talking about the things they're interested in, then they sort of end up like me right now. And so that might be an example of close range. Oh yes.
Okay.
Actually, oh my
Okay.
God, yes. Thank you, Chris. Yes, Victor's second question. Oh dear, I would have forgotten.
We're just having too much fun today, Ben. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yes, it's and here's another one to like reveal yourself. What are your hobbies and interests?
Oh, hobbies and interests. Well, that's always a tricky question for an INFJ, isn't it? You just never know what you're going to get. It's not so predictable. Hobbies and interests. I like to join meetup groups, but not go. I like to. I actually do a lot of spiritual hypnosis work for clients and friends. I am very interested in personal growth and development, so I can sit at a bookstore for hours on end just hanging out in that section and reading everything about that. I'm sort of a training geek book nerd kind of person, so I have a ton of books behind me, and most of them are on adult learning and adult education and how to get adults to learn. And yeah, so you know, kind of just a personal self-help junkie.
You are going to love Enneagram, Chris. You are going to be like, you might almost think about defecting, but you will sort of like have Enneagram on the side. You're going to love Enneagram for like self-help. Wow. So what is the right? So that would sort of fit with social mission. I'm not going to forget Victor's questions. I'm going to ask them. Right. So
can I make an observation here? It looks like and this is really for the benefit of people who've never seen this before. And if you scroll back up to the top, I noticed that the colors, the 4 colors that go down in the columns, have energy associated with them. And in fact, this was something that was a little surprising to me. Not the first column, because I really get that for me, NI and FE work together. So it is maximum energy. I was really surprised that under optimum energy, I saw extroverted sensing, but I didn't see introverted thinking there. So, and I understand that the layout of this is a little different than what I'm used to. I totally get that. But it just was really kind of a, oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. In terms of energy usage or how we process energy with the cognitive processes. Is that right?
Yeah, maybe this is where Maria could come in, because she's an INFJ and an Enneagram 5. So you could help us with this, Maria? Like the TI launcher in...
as far as energy use, I can just, on a more abstract plane, I would say that I see the manipulative function being very strong even from childhood, from the first months of life. So I can see it just as a side observer. I see it used a lot and used effectively and being flexible.
Maria, I was just curious on your take on the difference between having. I would think that introverted thinking would be in the creative block, and introverted feeling would be in the launcher block, only from the standpoint of optimum energy, because those are the 4 top preferred processes. So I'm curious to hear what your take is on having introverted feeling as optimum energy.
We'll have some guys over there.
Introverted feeling? I think it's at the maximum energy, the introverted feeling. I think it will always at work. Whatever I process, I instantaneously kind of fit it within other people's likes and dislikes. Any new information goes through that process. I know that whatever I hear, like Viktor would hate it, and like the other person like would love it, and so on.
And you don't think that that's extroverted feeling?
No, I think personal preferences are within introverted feeling, and the extroverted feeling is more about the atmosphere, about making people feel at ease and good about themselves.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that, because I relate to what you just said, and that is true for me as well. I just was curious why introverted feeling is in the optimum energy instead of introverted thinking.
I would say that it's introverted feeling, according to the slide, it's in the maximum energy. No, sorry, it's optimum. Optimum. Yeah, but yeah, it instead of introverted thinking, I feel like my introverted thinking is poor, or like reasonably poor, because every time I need to read instructions on something and like put things in order or just organize my house and whatnot, organize any new information, it kind of, it's exciting, but at the same time it stresses me out.
I can relate to that as well. But for me, playing in introverted thinking is so much fun. In a way that introverted feeling doesn't feel like fun.
Something, well, things can be fun and draining at the same time.
That's a good point. So thank you for that perspective. I was just curious on why you saw them where they're at versus in... I thought 2 and 4 should be flipped, but after your explanation, I'm not so sure.
So I think in a previous Hangout, Maria, it might have been the last one we did together, you talked about the difference between like when you're in like Enneagram 5 mode and it's something to do with knowledge, then you have more energy for that than for other kinds of TI things. Is that what you said? Right, because I think there was a bit of nuance that she put into a well, if people watch the mirror relationship, well, when she can come back in, she can maybe address that if she wants to. Right. So what were we? Oh yeah, part of it is and it is quite. I find it quite amusing. Is for the INTP, and this is like the launcher. It literally is like the INTP has to be made comfortable, right? Like say by an ESFJ, in order to be like in the right frame of mind, in order to like do something. And so it's like sort of got low energy for SI, and it's like, and they have it as like, and Viktor doing the trans contextual thing. He looked at that, looked at the bigger picture, and says, okay, it's like 4 stages, and it's like the tote model, and he related the launcher position to like the start of the cycle. And then and he sort of did like as this is the exit. That sort of like fits INTP really well. Like so they get to a point where they go, oh, does it feel right? Yeah, okay, I'll exit now. It might work like that. What we got? Right. So we've got the. I'll ask Viktor's 2 more questions, and then we'll get into the relationships between the blocks in terms of the tandem relationships. But I'll ask you Viktor's questions first. So the next 2 questions are just strengths and weaknesses.
So you want me to talk about my strengths and my opportunities?
However you want to phrase it. If you want to phrase it in an NF way, that's fine.
That's funny. Strengths, I would say, okay, without being too stereotypical of the INFJ profile, strengths would be the relentless pursuit and belief that idealistically people can move their lives forward in a way that's meaningful for them, and in a way that makes a big difference for them, and in a way that honors who they really are. And a lot of times my strength is being able to see when somebody is out of integrity with who they really are and what's possible for their future. And you know, a lot of times I get in trouble for meddling in people's careers. I'm just naturally interested in why people choose the careers that they're in and why they're doing what they're doing, and seeing what the relationship is to type, but also seeing, are they really maximizing themselves to their full potential? So, you know, there's some temperament in there as well. But if somebody wants to talk about career development, if somebody wants me to look at their resume and help them proof it and make it better, if somebody really wants me to go over interview questions and that sort of stuff, even though it may be something that most people really don't enjoy doing, I geek out on it. I love it. So that's a strength. I also think that when I'm working with hypnosis and my clients, really being able to hear authentically what's going on beneath the surface is so crucial. And that is a strength that I don't think many people have, just to be heard by somebody else on a deeper level, instead of what's just being said on the surface, but really getting a read on their energetic nature, and then being able to address those things that are important to them. Weaknesses, opportunities, areas for improvement. I hate math. I love it from the standpoint of, you know, I need to balance my checkbook and pay the bills, and I get that, and I can do that. But and believe it or not, I did really well in high school geometry, and did some calculus and did algebra and all of that sort of stuff. And I just determined that I would never do it again. So when I got to college, I majored in fine arts, which is sort of a tongue-in-cheek comment, but really that was a better place for me anyway. And so math is not a strong suit, although I enjoy it when I can figure it out. I just don't jump at the opportunity to do it. and I'm not really good at at repetitive tasks that are mindless. I mean, I would say probably most people on the planet are not, but I will do anything to distract myself if I had to do that, including getting myself in trouble, which has happened before. So, and other than that, I don't think that I was really meant to be a stockbroker in this lifetime, real estate mogul, or anything like that. It just don't have the common sense, if you will, to be able to read the situations in the moment and take the risks that are necessary. I'm somebody who thinks about my options quite a bit. So I hope that answered that question.
Right. So I think if we go through the profile, if we like finish the profile and say, "I'll go on there."
Yeah, I was gonna say that at the high school level, math seemed really exciting, or even before. But I had a real trouble with that in college, especially considering it was a really serious math. It was like my nightmare.
Yes, me too.
Because it was like a specialized math, it was really giving me nightmares. But I still enjoy it in a way, and I know people who take calculus just for fun, who are like my type or the ISFJ as well.
You know, I think for me too, Maria, it's like as long as there's no pressure on to perform as a test or to invest people's millions of dollars on their behalf or anything like that, I could really enjoy it as well, as long as it was we were having fun with it and it was relevant to something that was happening in my life or somebody I know's life as well. Then it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, responsibility is what spoils it.
Exactly. Well put.
I would hate a high responsibility job. That's the reason I would really not want to work in a clinical laboratory. I used to work in a research lab. That was fun because it was sort of like a playground of sorts. But clinical lab, it's really important, and if you make a mistake, and I did make mistakes, if it was in a clinical lab, people could really suffer.
Yeah, the experimentation part for me would be so much fun. And just getting in there and trying to have a result and seeing what happens. Like that for me and exploring that, that's amazing. But I agree with you. The clinical piece, in some ways, this is why I don't work in academics, because I have no interest in doing laborious research where I have to type out academic papers on my findings and then prove it, and that's just not who I am. So I understand.
Yeah, I think the reason INFJs are prone to making mistakes in like practical work is one of the reasons they have FE at the core and their TI is sort of on the surface. So anything that tips the balance make them slide into the FE.
I like sliding into my FE. I'm just going to be honest with you.
It's just not appropriate in high responsibility settings.
Boy,
and
that's true.
Also, when I read information, like in a textbook or online or whatever, I sometimes, because of my weak SE or weak TI, I don't really connect, or I make mistakes reading, and the information doesn't process the right way. So I can like miss the key point.
But you also, like, you're an Enneagram 5 and you've done like a really technical, hard degree, and I think you've talked before about you really like INTP mentors.
Yes, I did.
Do you want to say a bit more for the people that
I can elaborate. The reason I remember talking to an INTP fellow worker, INTP, who said that he trained his wife in the trade, I mean the biology lab work, He trained her from A to Z, and she was really good at what she was doing. And I saw her, and I think she's INFJ. And one of the reasons INTP is such a good mentor for INFJ is that INFJ cannot work unless he completely understands what he's doing. He needs to see the system behind the operations. He needs to know all the whys. Otherwise, he will not just follow the steps he's told.
Yeah, I would say, Maria, that's true for me. And, you know, Ben, one of the reasons why that's true, like when I found Linda's work, it's for me one of the most complete bodies of knowledge out in the type community. That has, I mean, she's prolific in her writing and in her training. It's very thorough, and she makes story upon story to make sure that you get a sense of each of the characteristics and traits. And it's so complete that there was no shadow of a doubt that I could play in type after I took her classes. And so, you know, her INTP nature helped me connect with it. And I think what Maria said there is so profound and so true that I would have to say that this is why I do a lot of research and why I read a lot of books, because you know, I can pick up a book at this point, open to the table of contents, and I can pretty much guess if it's going to be worth my time to read it or not, given the table of contents, and I will know, did this person really put in the effort it took to write this book from experience, knowledge, and truth? And if it's not, then I might pass it by or I might just skim through it. But what she said is so crucial that, and the other thing that gives me safety, and I don't know if this is true for Maria, that having that body of knowledge well-defined and systematized and categorized means I don't have to worry about it and put it in my brain, because I'm not somebody who can remember a ton of things. That's why I have a lot of notes around me and a lot of books around me, so I can always draw on them when I need to. So it just gives me comfort knowing I don't have to keep all the information in my brain, Ben.
Right. So if we now go to SI and TI in this profile, and then what I can do is we can discuss how the functions are linked.
Sure.
Right. That should be clear to people.
Speaking of SI, I can say that one of the problems with SI that INFJ will have is that it works in a specific fashion. Like it's usually fine, especially we're good remembering things that matter to people. If there was like particular stress in somebody's speech, like showing that it was important for them, we will remember it. It's some sort of selective memory. But also, the memory just goes away every time there's something really stressful goes on. At least for me. So after every serious event, I usually go blank on my memory. I have to, if I took notes what I was doing, I can read them and kind of go back to what I was doing. Otherwise, I'm just like just blank about what I was doing.
So if you're going through a stressful time, do you think I'd better write this down because I'm going to forget it?
For me, I don't know about Maria, but for me, I always have to write it down, because if I don't write it down, it's gone, and I almost am happy that it is gone.
Yeah.
But my friends who have better intellects than me are very quick to say, well, you just presented a 2-hour training class and you don't remember anything that you talked about, and it's almost like I'm channeling the information from a different space. It comes through me, I say what I say, and it's gone, which is where I go back to what I just said, and it could relate to introverted sensing, that if somebody else has all of the variables captured and worked out somewhere, I don't have to retain it. And I know that that's contrary to today's social media environment where people are experts and should be able to talk ad nauseum on anything that comes up in the conversation and answer it so expertly and have it all worked out, but that doesn't work for me. So I totally hear what Maria's saying about this process.
I can agree with your wording as long as I said something to a specific somebody, it's gone. I remember what was said to me, but I very seldom remember what I said to other people.
And I would agree for me too, as long as if it has an emotional attachment to what I said, I'll remember it. Like if there's a lot of emotion behind it, which is probably the extroverted feeling side, if there's something strongly emotional about it, I'll remember it. But otherwise, I'll think I said something and I really didn't. And that's really where my memory fails me is in introverted sensing.
That's one of the reasons duals are important, or also semi-duals can do the same job. They're good remembering stuff about you if they're in a relationship with you. So they can actually go back to what you've been before, what you said before, and can just unroll it on you.
Mm.
And it's important for us to have somebody who remembers what you were at some point and what you were saying to people.
You know, I think, Maria, that's why I record everything I do, because I can't trust my own memory. And so if I'm at a lecture, I'll record it on my phone. If I'm in a class and I'm teaching, I'll record it. I just want to have record because I don't trust my own memory. So I really appreciate that tip. I think that's a really good point.
And this is another record you can have. This hangout.
Exactly. People 20 years from now, I'll look back at this and go, oh my God, he's crazy. But, you know, oh well.
Model G, we're on Model X.
For this reason, I have like an obsessive need to like have a chat with my friend at least like once a day or once a couple of days, just to talk at her about what was bothering me, and then I hopefully have a record of it, or at least she will remember it for me.
I get it.
Because it will be gone after a while.
So, Chris, you probably view in SI in like the different half of the truth that Socionics looks at. It's like it's looking at a different. So this is not how you would define SI, but do those things in that pink box, that SI plus box, do they fit?
I would say the last two definitely fit for me, and the first one I'm not so sure about dressing elegantly, although I can if I have to. But the second one for me is sort of I wrote down in my notes about half true for me, which is often complains of poor health or discomfort, but will push himself to do. Like, I'm not really one to gripe about my health, and now as I'm saying that, but I do actually, catching myself in a lie right here, by the way, so for people who are watching this, what ends up happening is that I may say something about my health, but I really know that I'll get the job done no matter what. Like, there's nothing that's going to stop me, aside from being sick or going to the hospital. I'll get the job done, even if it takes me till midnight at night to work on it or whatnot. And only if I feel it's important.
Oh.
So I don't know if that has anything to do with SI, but I would say probably about 90% of those bullet points really work well for me, yeah.
Right, okay. Right, so if we just take a quick, if we don't go to SI, and the way it's defined here, unless...
I can say about dressing elegantly, it's more of a wishing part. They wish to dress elegantly and they can do it, but since their SE is not very strong, they cannot. Sometimes they don't see what they look like. So they
Amen to that. Maria, you hit that one on the head.
the same thing with cleaning. They may have high standards, but since they kind of once they achieve the result they want, the process sometimes is not worked out, so they may clean everything but leave the dust rag in the middle of the room, and they don't see it because the process is finished to them.
Oh, boy,
if somebody is a process type, they will do everything from start to finish, including taking the rag where it belongs. But we are the result types. We see the result, we are happy, we just leave everything as is.
I like that. Result versus process types. Huh?
Sometimes recently I've been thinking about developing my process side, and I was trying to clean my house as if I was blind. So I was just trying to go through the moves instead of trying to achieve certain result.
That's brilliant, actually. That's brilliant.
But I still have a lot of work to do on that. Because it's really important.
So sometimes it feels like it's never done, right, Maria?
Yeah, that's a completely different way of working.
Yeah. Good.
So the way Victor's described it there, well, Victor and Maria, because she did the translation. Do you think that fits the type? So, like, I think the first one ISTJ, and then the second one ISFJ.
I could say yes for the first one. It's funny because one of my parents is an ISTJ, which I really attribute that comfortableness around me to. But this is also true for me. Probably would be true for me even if that wasn't my history. Yeah, definitely.
Right, and let's have a look.
Interesting.
We'll go back to TI, and then I'll show you Victor's. Oh yeah, go on, Maria.
As far as this plus SI, I could say that it's very obvious with me because sometimes people notice that I'm good at having like cozy feeling in my interiors, but sometimes I just completely miss on the discomforts. Something that would bug them, I just don't notice or don't know how to deal with that.
I'm right there with you. I would say that that's true for me as well.
Like when something's broken, not that I don't know who to address or what to do with it, I just don't really see it.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it gets right in the way.
But so, I'll remind the...
Yesterday I had a washer almost broken, and then that terrified me. That I would probably take care of.
Yeah.
So there are some Socionics bigots out there who think that Socionics and MBTI aren't compatible, and I'll just say to them, listen to this, right, and you'll see that Chris, INFJ, MBTI is matching Maria, the equivalent type in Socionics. So you're going to have to suck that up, and then you can throw yourself off a cliff. I think.
Well, I'll just make a comment on that, Ben, because I think this is important. I think the characteristics that both worlds look at are different. Not that we don't want to be compatible, but I just, I think that the type world is still working out how to deal with the social aspects or the societal aspects of type. And I think that Socionics, it looks like, has made a little more stride in that direction. But it's not that that people in the type world don't want to be there. I just think that, you guys are running two different races, but they are compatible because you are using the same cognitive processes they're just distinguished a little differently for the lens that you're looking through.
Yeah. It's like, I see it as we're describing the same types of people, so it's slightly different approaches on the same thing, and I always like to look at things from different angles. And Maria herself, she does loads of it. She knows Kersey theory, and Enneagram, those sorts of things. So if we go to TI, then I'll show you like Viktor's definition of TI, which is very INTP. It's like you've probably not seen. Even Linda might go, "Whoa, I thought I was INTP." That is an INTP definition of TI. So I'll show you that in a moment. Here we go. So, oh, there it is. Does that fit?
Yeah, it sure does. So let me ask this question, and it may be an unpopular one. Now, would these 4 bullet points change depending on where they are at on the overall schema of this chart?
Oh,
or
yeah.
are those consistent throughout?
Well, this is when it's in that position, when it's TI launcher.
Okay.
Although Maria might be able to. Would that be similar for ISFJ, Maria?
What's the question again?
Different.
What's the question?
Chris was. Yeah, go on, Chris. If you want to rephrase it.
Yeah, Maria, I'm just curious. The 4 bullet points for introverted thinking here, would they be similar in all of? If it were in boxes 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8. If it moves to a different position in the overall structure, would the 4 bullet points say the same?
Sorry, come again?
So the 4 bullet points there for introverted thinking, for TI, if TI was not in the launcher, if it was in management or manipulative, would those 4 bullet points still say the same things?
No.
They change.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a combination of the position and the sign.
Okay.
Yes. So, for instance, because it's launcher, it's like they have low energy for it, and so, like I said, they need that sort of help from the outside to get organized, and it's like, oh, thank you, and then it sort of like sets them going with that sort of like external help, and it sort of like gets them kick-started. I suppose that's the way it is.
Yeah, I think, for instance, INTP will not be feeling lost in unusual complex circumstances.
Thank you. I was just curious, because I wondered if this was a definition or just characteristics of the position.
And same with like ESTP.
Okay.
They love unusual complex circumstances.
Yes.
Yeah, this fits.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Ben, this does fit for me for the most part. I don't have any disagreement with this.
Right, now we're going to see Viktor's mind-blowing definition of TI. Right, so this is TI in the INTP. Logic of fractal structure.
Let's see. Well, yeah, I mean, this makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not far off from the classical definition of INTP either, in that, you know, when you're using introverted thinking, you're looking at things through frameworks, and what is the framework, the categorization, what makes sense, and it's reconciling all the, all of the disparate parts to find the whole, to find the pattern, to find the logic, and dealing with the contradictions and the paradoxes. I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. I'm curious to see what TI looks like in the positive.
Okay, but yeah, okay. Oh, here we go. So this is, so Victor said that this will be for, it's seen more clearly for like ISTP. Oh, right, yeah, logic of uniform structure. And I think then I have to switch to that one. Right, I'll have to switch between the two. There we go. And what I could do is I could, I might. Right.
This is interesting.
Right, then I'll switch to the next one. Right.
So it's more linear. It's not dealing with such multi-dimensional complexities.
Yeah. Yeah, Victor's put a little dig in there about usual socionics. He calls like information socionics, and he'll call them informationists. So he's got a little dig in there. This is the logic of information socionics. It just like looks at things from one way. But
interesting.
Right. Yeah, because like I said, I'm having a look at Victor's cognitive styles. Boy, is he doing some transcontextual. He's like showing this philosopher thinks like this philosopher like is like analysed all these different philosophers, and forms of thinking. So if we go back to this, and then, well, in fact, now we can actually talk about that position a bit. To sort of like, yeah, because you've made some notes. So, Chris, have you got any notes? Because you've made some notes about certain parts of this model.
Mm-hmm.
We could try and answer them now.
Actually, the notes that I took, Ben, were really like question marks about. I wanted some deeper explanation. Otherwise, I felt like it was very, very appropriate for what fit me.
Right. So, any bits? Where are the question marks that you'd like some? Bit more
I think it was really under SI.
Right.
And then it was under TE, so the break process. But
part of Victor's theory. Yeah, go on.
No, I was gonna say I just had one more question on FE, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was just about to say. So we have like this is so management is like sets the goal. The creative is like it's about implementing it. So it's like for instance, if you think of ESTJ and ESFJ, they've got a lot of extroverted sensing in the background that enables them to implement. There, like Elena, our number one interpreter, like Facebook post, I'll just cycle 20 miles, like just rattle that off, like loads of energy. So ASFJs have lots of energy, and ESTJs. So implementation, and so not necessarily about high EEG activity, although certain types will show it. So I looked at the introverts in Dario's research, and they do show a lot of activity there. So for instance, ISFP, it's a lot of activity in the back of the brain that you'd associate with introverted sensing. So it's like their Gulenko creative function is really strong, but because it is about implementation, it's not necessarily about like mental effort in thinking about it. And Victor mentioned something about a Russian statistician who looked at trying to work out the top 2 strongest functions. And Victor wrote that he thought that this one actually was the second strongest in a lot of types. So and then for the role function, this is the one that you need constant training on. So in my case, it's like I have to like constantly train my FI. Don't interrupt Ben. Don't be inappropriate. It's like I've got to keep on training that area. And apparently the dual will help you in that. We'll come on to that a bit later. And then for the launcher it's just the thing that gets someone stimulated. Like INFJ and ISFJ like to be, I suppose, given some clarity, and then they will it will set them off on a new round of activity. And so that they're actually so they get turned on by the TI, and it will enable them to. So then, as Maria said, like they need help in that area, but it will launch them. So ironically, you can get to a situation where, because they like it so much, they like build it up, and it's like, so for instance, with Maria's case, it says, well, you need help with TI, but you're clever. You see what I mean? So it's like the two things, it's almost like a weakness becomes a strength, because they value it so much that it sort of like builds up.
Yep.
So that's that part of the model. And then, so I think I've mentioned energy for people would be the idea that, oh yeah, so how do you think, what do you think, Chris, of the energy component of this model? Of it, do you feel your energy decreasing for the functions that it does?
I would say all except for TI really fit for me. And I think TI and FI for me feel very close, but I'm willing to consider this model. That maybe it's more hopeful energy for TI than it is, you know, than what's actually there. So I think I need to really kind of be with this a bit longer to notice that. Otherwise, I feel like this is pretty. Like, obviously 1, 5, 6, yes, yes, yes. I would sense, yeah, I mean, I definitely know 7 and 8 are the hardest for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would, you know, if I were to trade places, I would probably put extroverted thinking in 4, just from the energy perspective. Because, boy, those two are so difficult for me. But otherwise, it seems pretty in line. So I think I just need to kind of look at it through this lens of energy and notice, and I might have a different answer for you a week later. So
just from a theoretical point of view, Chris, would you say that you are like an FE subtype of the INFJ?
Subtype. What does that exactly mean?
Oh, okay. Do you think you've got stronger FE than the usual INFJ?
I don't know the answer. Mine is strong because I've had to use it so often in the line of work that I'm in. But I almost feel like my introverted thinking and my extroverted feeling are on par with each other most times. And then I get the reality check that I don't use introverted thinking as well as I do. So, but yeah, my extroverted feeling is very strong. So, and like I was saying, for maximum energy, those two together in tandem with each other, it couldn't be better. Like, if I get to stay in those two functions for a long time, life is good.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like here, like Viktor saying, it takes more than its lion's share. And that people like to stay in their top 2 functions.
But I really enjoy extroverted sensing when I can get nudged into doing it. Vacation is a very strong time for me to use extroverted sensing. Going out to restaurants with friends and really just enjoying the experiences in the moment of tasting the food and smelling the smells and, you know, drinking the wine and and that sort of thing. So I think it's contextual for me.
Right. Yes. If we can have a look at this once, if we like do the example of, because now we're on your self-affirmation block, and this will be like the 2 functions that you love, to put it bluntly.
Mm.
You like these two functions.
Yeah, I didn't disagree with anything in these two, other than I wasn't quite sure about lyric poetry, but I do have a sense that, you know, musical lyrics come really easy to me, and long after I've forgotten most things, I can definitely remember a song from 1975 and all of the lyrics, or can remember movie lines that were memorable. So, so lyric poet, like that threw me at first, but I get the sense that playing with lyrics and memorizing lyrics for me is a form of artistic expression, and in fact, I really like some of the more avant-garde lyric choices from Madonna in some of her more outlandish songs, just because she's playing with her own artistic expression in lyric. You know, and without saying much more than that about Madonna, because we'll leave that there, I do have a respect for her in terms of how her and her team have crafted her lyrics in some of those more esoteric and avant-garde songs, not some of the more mainstream songs. And sometimes rap music sometimes inspires me on how those songs get put together and what they're conveying in their message, even if it's not conventional language.
I would say that I had trouble translating that because in Russian, lyric poetry is not the poetry that has to do with songs, but a poetry which comes from deep personal experience, as opposed to like epic or something like that about the
No, that makes sense.
So it's lyric poetry as if deep personal poetry.
Yeah, and that really does work for me, because most of the stuff that I resonate with in music or in words are deep expressions of personal pain, deep expressions of relationships and all the dynamics. But it has to have me connect with the person, and then it works really well. But I also love, and this is, I also love music that transports me to a different place or a different time or brings memories alive, because it can do that. And having music play that's like, I love French music because it reminds me of being in France, and I loved my experiences there every time I went. So, you know, there is that, it has to connect, and I think that's kind of what Maria is saying there.
I also have a thing with geography. I think I have strong attachment to cities and places, maybe sometimes even stronger than people, and even my experiences with people have like my geographic attachments as like a reference point. If I wonder if I ever like the person as much as I like cities.
I understand, Maria, and it's one of the reasons that I love to travel and explore the world. And for me, those geographical points are anchors for me in my experience and in my timeline, and they help me recall periods of time in my life when I do that. And it's also why I like facilitating past life regression for people, because it's so interesting to hear other people's experiences of memories that are buried in the subconscious that take them to other places and what their experiences were. Not to derail the chat here, I'm sorry, Ben, but that really spoke to me when she said geographical points.
When you started to talk about past life, I thought, wow, that is INFJ. That is some serious mystical stuff.
I can't get away from it. It pulls me forward. It does really great things for people too.
And that's even in like the Kersey profile of INFJ. It talks about, and many of them think they have ESP.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because earlier you were mentioning something about NI, and I was going to share with you a thought, which is a lot of times, you know, and it was SI. I can't remember what I said when I was training, and I joked like it was like channeling. but sometimes it really is just the experience of bringing information through. And if I don't have all the facts, which is where I get derailed with my introverted thinking, if I don't have all the facts, sometimes I'll just intuitively know, and I'll say that, and it turns out more times than not to be right on the money, even if I've not really ever done research about it or not. So my intuition in trusting that is very strong.
Yeah.
So
that reminds me of an Kersey thing. NS trust intuition. Yes,
that's true.
Now this is now for me SE is my I call it the allergic function because I'm a little bit allergic to it. But for you, this is like your oh yes, the jewel is ESTP.
Mm. So you're opposite.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're allergic to extroverted sensing, huh?
Yeah, because I feel it's like they're putting pressure on me, and I'll like overreact. So it's like if Jefferson were president now, he might think, he might think I might need to get rid of Iran. They're putting pressure on me. I can see how this is going to go. And it's because they like feel the pressure more and might overreact. I don't know. Oh dear.
You know, for me, this is about really rolling with the punches. Whatever shows up, just, you know, I may feel a particular way at first, but I just go with it because it's what's there, it's what presents itself.
Yeah, you mentioned something like that before about sometimes if you're presented with a complex situation, you like adapting to it. And I was thinking that made me think of the Kersey theory of SP as being adaptive and sort of like tactical in the moment.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. The fourth bullet here, it says may show unexpected courage under pressure. In a previous job, I walked into it not knowing what to expect, and one morning I walked in and my boss said, "Okay, you're presenting an 8-hour course today." I'm like, oh, I guess I should have prepared for that, but I didn't, and I didn't know. So okay, let's do it. And that's kind of one of those courage under pressure things, and it really ups my game and it makes me perform harder. And it's almost like a self-challenge. It's not a challenge to anyone else, but there is this sort of inner competitiveness, like, can I really pull this off? And can they really get value from the session, even though I don't know what's going to happen? And can I roll with the punches? And can we have a great time doing it? And it's really all of those pieces, but it's really just taking that first step and just stepping into the pressure.
But again, you like I said, with you presenting a course, it's sort of on your territory, within your field.
It is, but also realize though that I prefer it if I know the people, because there's my extroverted feeling.
Yeah.
Like I want to have that connection. But imagine, if you will, walking into an auditorium with 300 people you've never met before, and you're having to present to them for the first time on a topic that could be a bit challenging and difficult, like sexual harassment training or ethics violations, something that's not my strong suit and something I really don't enjoy training because it doesn't make people feel good. Yeah. So just stepping into that type of situation is what, and while I can do the training because I have that experience in the background of facilitation, it still doesn't mean I really love it, nor do I want to do it. But I could do it. I can step into that pressure and do it.
Right.
Good point.
Sometimes INFJs are considered very brave by other types of people because they are not afraid of people also.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the same with like stage fright. They don't typically have it.
Yeah. Isn't that something, Maria? I know. I get that.
That's definitely something for other people. I never really noticed it until it was pointed out by somebody else.
Yeah, there's sort of this ebb and flow of just being in the dialogue with people, and sometimes my partner, who's an INTP, I'll say, you know, you didn't press that person about this issue, and they say, and Mark will say, I just didn't think it was appropriate for me to say anything. It's none of my business. I'm like, are you kidding? We're human beings. Of course it's your business. But that's me taking it to an extreme just to make a point here. I'm very fearless in having those conversations and connecting with people if I know I can make a difference and I can make an impact and it better them. And so, yeah, there is that sense that we are fearless.
On your territory.
Yeah. Bingo.
So how do you? So we've got the function here, and then Socionics would say this will then relate to the intertype relations and how you feel about this in other people. So like having respect for strong and determined people, and generally, how do you feel about ESTPs?
Oh, I love them. Absolutely adore them. And, you know, when I first started working in the type world, people would say, oh, they're opposite of you. You're going to have a lot of conflict. But it's not that we have conflict. I understand where they're coming from and what they're trying to accomplish. And they may actually approach it differently than I would, but I definitely adore and respect them for just being able to get in there, say what they have to say, get the job done. I may not agree with everything that they say, but I definitely have respect for most ISTPs I've run across.
I mean, that's how I tell the difference between an INFJ and an INFP who thinks they're an INFJ, is to just ask them if they like an ESTP.
Yes, I know. I've had many conversations with INFPs and even ENFPs who just don't understand why ESTPs are the way that they are and how rude and disrespectful it is, which is, you know, that introverted feeling is really just being pulsed when that happens. Yeah, for them. I get it. It's tough for them to understand that, I think, sometimes. And I can't imagine what ESTP thinks of NFPs. You know, I don't have a pulse on that either. In the moment, I'm just talking about it, and I'm like, it's got to be a bit challenging. Like, you know, I'm thinking of one person. Go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
What EJR&D has said about INFPs is like they don't think. It's just like their own introverted feeling all the while, and they can't step outside of themselves.
Yeah.
And it's like, and because with him, he's like a TI subtype, so he's got really strong TI. He was at like the Naval Academy and like really good on game theory, and he only subscribes to about 6 people, and one of them is Peter Schiff, who's like uber TI. So like EGR&D is like really strong TI, but his FI is awful. So he's like an exaggerated ESTP.
I imagine for an ESTP it would feel like they're a bit lazy because they're not as active and always moving like an ESTP can be, you know, and involving and inclusive and movement and, you know, and being bored and sitting for too long is so tough on an ESTP. I used to manage one, and so I would imagine there could be some feelings like, oh gosh, those NFPs are a bit lazy, even though they're not.
And EJ&D has such low opinions of them. He'll say things like that INFPs are into furry porn.
God, I don't have a comment for that. Especially not on a Hangout that's live.
I have a lot of admiration for INFPs. They have, specifically with my subtype, I don't have a very good imagination, and sometimes I admire their ability to talk about things at length and make things up. But I know that some people just think they're liars because they make things up a lot just for fun because they're and E is demonstrative.
Interesting.
Yeah, auxiliary, yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that, Maria. I don't think I'm the most imaginative person. I do think I have good visualization skills, but I don't think I'm very imaginative. And so, and yeah, some of my closest friends are INFP. They're just incredibly talented. I have such deep respect for INFPs and my ENFP friends, of course.
A lot of INFPs are Enneagram 4. And they have it's also called the romantic, but they have a deep striving to be original. And my Enneagram, I mean, most INTPs are Enneagram 5, but I'm like Enneagram 4 wing 5, so I'm like not the usual INTP, and so.
Is there a usual INTP? I've not met one yet.
Well, it's like they're more like Enneagram 5, knowledge, 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 all the while, and so it's like when you read a description of the Enneagram 5, it's like, whoa, this is like a description of INTP, but it gives you all the like different 9 levels of mental health, and so it's very useful if you fit an Enneagram. It's so useful because it gives you 9 levels of mental health. It shows you how you become when you become less mentally healthy, what happens when you become more mentally healthy, and it's a very useful tool. And when combined with Jungian type, really helps to explain differences. So, for instance, Maria's Enneagram 5, Crystal's Enneagram 2, and we're thinking of doing a hangout with lots of INFJs that are different Enneagrams, and that should help, because when someone's an odd combination, it can be hard to type them. So, for instance, you could have like a sensing type that is an Enneagram 5, and with their thirst for knowledge, someone might think, oh, they're an intuitive. But they have to like look carefully and find out what are the sort of things that what type of knowledge are they interested in, and it makes people look closer by knowing about Enneagram. Right, now we can go back a little bit to how they're connected, because we've done SE. We can have a look at a bit of the theory of those two functions. Oh, gone the wrong way. Alright. And then I'll go in a bit. No. There we go. Right then. So,
can I also make a comment about SE for a second? I think dignity has to do with SE on a psychological level, and so because of the sensitive SE, also INTJ and INFJs feel very strongly about other people's dignity and kind of rush to protect it when they.
I like that word. I think that speaks volumes. Dignity is very important.
So we've got, and there we've got the demonstrative triggering. So the idea here would be, Chris, you've got auxiliary FE, so demonstrative FE, and your dual has launcher FE. So you would be supplying FE to the ESTP, and that would sort of launch them into, I don't really know how, because I've not read that profile yet, so I need Victor to send it to me and Maria to translate it. So I don't really know about that.
In my experience with my employee and friends, it's really about having them just reflect for a moment on the impact that they're making to other people, instead of just going out and making an impact for the sake of making an impact. It's really about having them consider for a moment the impact of how something's going to land for somebody, And I think that's really what sparks that for them. Like, so I get that just from my experience. So yeah.
Jeff has talked about his son. Jeff Miller's an ESFP, and his son is a 16-year-old ESTP. And I think he said that Morgan, he can read all of the emotions extremely well in someone's face, and even Kersey wrote that ESTPs are great at seeing body language, but if someone's expression then changes, their emotions, they don't know why, because of the weak FI.
Right.
Whereas they're not interested in that arty-farty NF, INFP type stuff, where they would concentrate on the feelings. And they wouldn't be reading those kind of novels which concentrate on those kind of feelings. So yeah, Dario's got here. So that fits the maximum energy, where he's put people have the most comfort for positions 1 and 5. So yeah, Maria.
No. Nothing.
Okay. I like the system with the microphone, because as soon as someone switches their microphone on, I know they want to speak, and then I can wind up. So, okay, in bold there, do you think that's right, where it says, so that's like, ISFJ becomes active when he knows the rules or is given a good explanation, and he will try to get others into action with his display of emotion. Do you find that to be true?
For INFJ or ISFJ?
ISFJ.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's part of their profile. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're they'll also launch a TI like the INFJ, or tertiary TI. Yeah. So that's that connection, and then yeah, go on, Mia.
ISFJ has like plus TI, so they to me their TI seems more rigid.
Yes.
It's more about rules and like no alternative things.
Yeah. I would say that looking at the definition, looking at Viktor's profiles that I've seen so far, he does seem to have categorized the way MBTI looks at SI. It's like we can tell, like Chris can tell that Viktor's observations are spot on, but he's categorized them slightly differently. So he'll like observe some things that MBTI might classify as SI, and Viktor might have put them under TI. Like in this example here, with the so the observations, it's just a slightly different categorization, I suppose, with that the SI thing. The one I find interesting is this one, where this connection. And I suppose that this is where you can come in, Chris, and talk about your research and theorizing on the tandem use of functions, because now we've got a tandem.
Yeah, you're talking about the launcher demonstrative tandem.
Yeah.
So let me just be clear about something, because I think this is important. I'm not advocating that I'm not advocating that the positions have particular feels, although I think you probably could take this model and say that when you put 4 and 5 together, it has a particular feel, and when you put positions 1 and 6 together, there's a particular feel. What I said earlier to you, Ben, was right here. So the creative and the break are always in working together in your model here. I don't know what that tandem would be called, and/or what that dynamic would feel like, look like, what the sense of that would be like, just because I don't know this model very well. But if you could go back to that other slide you just had up.
Okay. But
that one.
in in generally, irrespective of models, how do you see the dual functions working together?
Yeah, I think that they're inseparable. In other words, I think this is and this just from the research that I've done, and I think probably I would say I'm a purist when it comes to the quadras in your language,
Yeah.
or the cognitive intentional styles in my language, and I really look through that lens first. So I would say that extroverted feeling and introverted thinking, well, they are different on the surface, they're inseparable, and they power each other, and that there is a dynamic that they share in common. So you could say that they both embody a particular dynamic or something that they're interested in gaining by working together. There is this sort of motivation that each of these pairs has that impels those cognitive functions to work together. And I don't think you can separate them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would think that it's very hard to tell them apart on this level because, for instance, NI and SE, it's like, can you really tell if a matter is important or urgent? Because important is like SE category and urgency is like NI category. Or for FI and TE, is that when you ask a question, if like this is a proper way of doing things, is this an ethical question or a question of logistics? Just moving through the steps. Are the steps correct from just TE perspective, or there is also FI perspective?
And Maria, you said it beautifully right there.
In intuition, there is a proverb saying that intuition is a daughter of information, and intuition would be like your NE, and information comes from your SI. It's your like luggage that you carry. SI is your experience that you can pull up, and your intuition stems from there. It uses the
one of the analogies I have is in one of the things that we talked about, and Linda's been talking about since the 70s, is the concept of tandem dynamics. And I liken it to having a bicycle built for two people, and in the back you have your introverted function that's powering and pedaling, and in the front you have your extroverted function. So when it's going down the road and you're seeing this bike come at you, you're only seeing, for the most part, the extroverted function, and if it's a weak function, it's maybe not so great. And in the back you have the introverted function that's pedaling, 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 and helping propel it, but they work in tandem with each other. And then as it passes, you can see the introverted function and not so much the extroverted function. And then if you were to turn around, you would see the backside of the introverted function, and you wouldn't see the extroverted function. So it's a matter of perspective. It's a matter of that the tandems never really are separate. And it's a matter that we've been trying to pull them apart and look at them as if they were individual, and to be clear and to distinguish the characteristics of it, which I think is great. But the other thing that I notice too is a lot of times people will attribute behavior with the cognitive processes, when really it's cognitive. It's how we think about what's going on in our environment and in our heads. So one of the things I was talking with Ben about, Maria, before we started, is that each of those cognitive processes has a product that it's trying to achieve. It wants to create or get to something, and it impels the process to do what it does so that it has the outcome of the product that it's trying to produce by thinking those thoughts. And I think this is kind of where I see Viktor is going with the distinctions and being really finite with the distinctions of TI plus and minus and so forth, having those polar opposites there, and trying to pick apart what it means with TI positive versus TI negative.
Can you give me an example with the product of those processes?
Sure. So, for example, introverted thinking is the process. Well, let's not use introverted thinking. Let's do extroverted feeling, which is the process of connecting. At least that's what we call it, right? It's about connecting to other people and what's important to them and being of service. It's also about looking at universal trends. But really, why does FE do that? Why are we so interested, if we use extroverted feeling, why are we so interested in connecting? What does connecting ultimately lead to? Now, Linda and I have had debates about this, but my hypothesis is that it ultimately leads to affiliation. So the reason why we experience the mental process of connecting is so that eventually we can get to a point of being affiliated. And so affiliation would be the outcome of that process, or the product it's trying to get to, whether it ever gets there or not. That sense of being affiliated is critical in fulfilling extroverted feeling.
Right. So do you then notice that with couples which have the dual functions, does it help them create things?
Say more about that, Ben. Like, give me an example of what you're thinking.
Well, so for instance, here Viktor did with these relationships. Here, Viktor broke down the relationships. It's like, so for instance, you've got inferior SE and lead NI, and ESTP has lead SE and inferior NI, and you were saying there about them working together. Whereas if you're in a dual relationship and those two are like helping their inferior function, right? Could that then help those two functions work together because you've got this other person that sort of complements you psychologically?
I think that is one possible thing that could happen. Sure. But I also think that the processes will push to get their needs fulfilled, to get those products that they're seeking. You know, so a very clear example is that, you know, somebody may give me the research that what I'm trying to do with spiritual hypnosis is a sham, it's a fraud, it doesn't work, there's a million religious reasons why it shouldn't work, but that stubborn NI is really struggling to gain what it can gain in the process, and it's relentless, and it won't let go of me, and I can't help it. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Right.
I probably didn't answer your question.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I just realized that sometimes I feel an urge to do things in a certain order, and sometimes I even I feel like my logic tells me that this may be, from my own point of view, it's the completely wrong order. I should be doing this first and the other thing sometime in the future. But then later I realized from the common standpoint, like from the point of view of the group of people I've been working with, this was perfect, and it just didn't have my own interest in mind as much as it was the situation in general.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I don't understand why I do things this way. I learned it only later that it was better for the like general situation in general.
Yeah, you know, Maria, for me, introverted intuiting is about putting all of the parts in front of our brain, you know, just like what could happen if this, what could happen if that, and what's most likely going to happen if I do X, Y, or Z. And it just seems to work out most of the time. And I think it's that you're talking about that process of just sort of, I know that common sense may dictate I start here and go there second and there third, But I'm going to start with number 3, and then we'll go back and do 1 and 2. And it turns out that it was a better process for you in the right? So.
Yeah, and also I wanted to say that I don't feel like I own my NI. It gets the best of me in many cases.
Exactly,
Because
yeah, I get that.
that's something larger than I myself. Sometimes I feel like I just have to get up and go somewhere, and then when I actually get there, I find that there was probably somebody waiting for me to encourage them or something.
Wow.
That's happened too. I wonder too, Ben, if there's a part of everybody, it's not an I, but there is one function that causes people,
I think it's
well, maybe it's the management function.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I was also saying it's management function.
Management function. You have no control over it. It pulls the cord. It pulls the wagon and with you on board, yes?
Yeah, but for NI types, it's like going with the flow. And I think INTJs seem to have more like cognitive control over that, but it's like the difference between a witch and a mermaid. INFJs are mermaids.
Well, that's a very NF comment.
I get it. I get the analogy. I think that's great.
My INTJ mother was sometimes surprised that I look sort of helpless, but then things just happening around me. Because my base function works differently from hers, it just tries to get into the flow and like be harmonious with the flow. Don't be like some rock that cuts the wave. It just means like going where everything goes and just following without even knowing.
Right, just staying in that flow.
Yeah.
So this is Chris. This is my modern art of the Rogers.
Yep.
How much do you think I could get? How much do you think I could get for it at auction?
From another INTP, you could probably get a pretty penny. And this is my point why I wanted the 4 styles, because, oh dear God, trying to remember this in your head. I remember when I started learning the cognitive processes and the orders that they go in. It's just too much information if you don't have, if you don't use introverted thinking in one of the first 4 functions. Or you're not an NTJ. Most people really just stay away from the cognitive processes, and I've had people tell me, I could not teach this in an organization because there's no practical application at first. Like, and you know, most organizations want quick results, and this is so complex. So I thought, you know, the quadras, as you call them, or the intentional styles as I call them, were a way to simplify how we think about the world. And then we could actually take it into organizations and make a difference with it.
Right. So,
at least here in the United States, most people like it when they are given just a sequence of steps to follow. That's EE value in society.
It is, and that's not true for all cultures, right?
That kind of setting, because I need to understand what's behind it.
Right.
Maria, what do you think of Viktor's views on the romance styles with NI and SE?
I think I think it's useful. I like this not just for romance, but for like general attitude. It's I think it's more of a life philosophy than simply romance stuff.
Yes, SE is being aggressive.
Also, I have some like weird twist on that. Just figured out for myself. It has to do with the shifts, which I like to observe as being a dynamic type. I like to observe shifts in a type behavior, like when a person is in the strange like somewhere new, dealing with people he just met. He tends to lean on the super ego block, and their romance style, or whatever you call it, shifts accordingly. So for the society and in the new circumstances, victim types tend to be caregiving. They inevitably turn the caregiving side toward the society, but they also, like, toward their friends or partners, they sort of turn the infantile side. So if they sort of expect their partners to take care of them because they need somebody to be a child with. Just one or a few people they can show their childlike side to.
I think EJ R&D sort of put it like this. He said ESFJs like to change the diapers of the NTPs for SI and NE, and I think it was something like the SE types like to chase and the NI types like to be chased. And because he did this video called How to Pick Up the Types, and I can't remember what else he said, but that was good. But yeah, so Chris has got probably about 10 minutes left now. So if we go to block 7 and 8, the inflation block, and I'll just show people this quote from Viktor. What we got here? Overvoltage on this block leads to collapse of the mind, just as monetary inflation leads to collapse of the economy. Right, that's debt monetizer. That's QE, folks. So Viktor knows QE is not a good thing. Right. And how does he know this? Well, he lived through hyperinflation in the 1990s. Right. So, what do you think of this, Chris? When you looked at this, like this sort of block of those two things. Oh, I've made a mistake. I should go to the profile. Oh, here we go. I made a mistake. There we go. So, what about this then, Chris? What about your frugality?
Yeah. Let's talk about point number 2.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
I can say about myself that Enneagram is huge here. Like E5s are generally more stingy and not. They can spend a lot on other people, but when it comes to themselves, they like to save. So that affects the TE behavior.
Do you buy a lot of books? Do you spend a lot on books, Maria?
Yes.
Same here. No, I agree with Maria because you know, I can pretty much do without so many things that most people would be horrified. You know, like I don't need a new car and I don't need the latest and greatest of things, and I can really stretch money on a budget if I have to. And when I don't have to, I don't. So I think that's kind of that frugality. I would say that I am not somebody who wastes any resources. And I'm very careful about making sure that I'm buying something when I go to purchase something in the marketplace that is meaningful, that's going to have an impact, that is going to further what I'm interested in. But I'm not somebody who will throw money unnecessarily. And I can't say that that's always been true. In my younger days, I was not very frugal. But sometimes life takes over and teaches you the importance of being frugal. Yeah. And that's happened to me.
Speaking of other INFJs I met, they tend to be fairly sensitive about spending. But usually FE sometimes takes precedence. I mean, they would spend when they think it's socially more appropriate.
So
they may overspend on other people, for instance, to make them feel better.
I agree with that.
Or overspend on a wedding, maybe.
Oh my God! I'm so happy that I didn't have to have a wedding in the United States. I would just go broke.
Are you talking about me there, Mr. Ben?
No, I was just thinking in general about
Well,
if you want to talk about that, that's fine.
so, well, just since this came up, I did get married in the U.S. and Maria, I planned it to where we did most of the things behind the scenes, so we wouldn't have to spend a lot of money on the wedding because it is very expensive. And so, you know what? I was going to say, for me, frugality has a filter, and my filter is always, do we need this or do we want this? And need always comes before want. Always, always, always. And then when we have vacation time, that's a whole different story.
I think sometimes the way people understand break function is not exactly right. Sometimes there is a lot of activity on break function that people don't necessarily avoid using it. Sometimes they use it inappropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yes.
there's a lot of people with like break FI, they judge other people too much. And INFJs or ISFJs may be sometimes too frugal, unnecessarily frugal, for instance. I can give an example. When ENTJ will spend money sometimes because they feel like it will save you more at the end, but we will not go there because we don't see it as clearly. So we can try to save a penny and lose more eventually.
Right. It's almost like overcompensating.
Yeah. Sometimes I try to. That's why we try to find somebody who will just stop us from being too stingy or trying to save in inappropriate places.
Maria, there's a complex bit that I would like your opinion on. It's when it says here, it gives the example of making a product and the person expects it to be done. Like that when it says it expects it to be custom made. And could you explain a bit more about that? About how that works? Just
Come again?
sort of general theory. How that because Victor's put here that that one there, the function is created almost from scratch, and what that sort of means.
That part I don't really get.
I think it might be the link, like when it says here with ISFJ, they create new relationships by bringing people together, hence name mediator, and they expect the business logic part to be custom made. So it's like they just expect it to sort of naturally flow on from that. So maybe in my case, I don't know. Yeah, that's a real complex bit.
I cannot say that I really understand that part in Viktor's description.
My only sense of that, and if I'm trying to interpret that, is for me, extroverted thinking is something I really don't do well at all, so I have to kind of make it up as I go. If I need to use it, I have so little facility with it that it is like it takes a lot of energy to do it, and it is like I'm making it up as I go. Whereas somebody who uses this in one of their top 4 functions, you know, is so better adept at it. They don't have to think about it. It doesn't take as much energy. I think that's kind of what he's trying to say there, but that's my interpretation.
And it would work in tandem with FI, and that bit there about it expects it to be like here, because you would use FI in a similar way. creates new relationships and expects the business logic part to be custom made. I don't know what that would be in.
As far as FI, the dual relationship works in a funny way. Like ESTP sometimes needs his dual to to create good reputation for him. He needs somebody to explain to everybody that he's actually a very good guy or girl.
I see. Helps with their FE PR skills.
Or that his values are actually very good.
Ah, right, gotcha. Right, so how much longer have you got left, Chris? Is it about 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
I've a little over time at this point, but I'll give you a few more minutes, and then I have to make a call. So.
Okay, if we go to the NE one, so what is that? It says so. If we go to Control NE, how do you feel about NE?
For me, I don't feel this is very strong at all. In other words, people who use NE very well, they're just so adept at putting together all the disparate parts and seeing all the trends and surfing those waves of creativity and where things lead to and sort of following the trails in 35 different directions. It just overwhelms me and exhausts me. So. Although I do, like, these bullet points ring true for me. I put yes to all of them. I just don't do this very well at all.
And E has different levels of expression, as just like any function. But just one example on a physiological level. I was shopping yesterday, and I decided to look at the shelf with the cookies, which are pretty much same in every store, but there is a lot of variety. I noticed that out of the like hundreds they have, I maybe tried 1 or 2 over like 15 years in the United States.
That's true for me at a restaurant.
And whereas like an ENFP might, yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, yeah, for me that's true. I notice that about myself when I go to a restaurant, and I've been there so many times before, and I still get the same thing. Yeah,
Wow.
I don't have if I like something, I like it, and the curiosity and to try something new and different isn't there. Whereas when I go to have lunch with my friend who's an ENFP and uses this preference very heavily, like, to pick something on the menu takes her 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, because she's just like, she's almost tasting in her mind each of the items and what she feels like, and, what would that be like today, and am I in the mood for, just there's all these, like, interesting explorations that she does when she's trying to find something on the menu.
Right. Right. So if we go to the theory now of that function, what we got here? This is the idea how this relates to the role function. So, so the one that needs to be trained up. So SI in new. So ESTP would have the SI control. What have we got? Oh, we've got a plug there at the bottom, but people are watching on this channel anyway. Right, yeah, the way it links with the role function, which is like number 3. I think Mira and Crystal have talked about this, where they talk about a lot of possibilities, but they don't actually act on them. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to see that relationship there.
Now, because you've got to go soon, if we have a quick look at this table of, we've done the SI. There we've got the F. We've got that SE plus, like Paris. So it's like, what do you think about it? Well, I think that matches the SFP.
Oh yeah, that definitely I think would describe that.
And then ESTP is, and so I asked Viktor about this. Would it be a good idea to put them two together? He says no, because one's going to resist the other one subordinating them.
I don't know that ESTP builds hierarchies. They may look for them, but I don't think that they build them. In fact, my experience with ESTP is that they are more fraternal than hierarchical. And that's just my experience.
Yeah,
However, you are. Yeah, go on.
Yes, because they are trying to be fraternal, but they also look for the signs that you respect them and give them sort of authority, the sense of authority. I think they sort of look for it rather than imposing it on you. But I agree that they're fraternal and they build that sense of community first, and then subordination kind of is secondary. They expect you to feel it yourself rather than.
Right. And now we've got FI. Do you think that matches, Chris?
I don't see it.
Oh, it's not.
There it is. FI. I'm looking at.
Yeah, if you just, I think you've clicked on the square. Yeah. Oh.
I'm just trying to see which one I'm looking at. F plus.
Yeah, it'd be like plus R. In brackets, I've got like FI plus and FI minus.
Ethics of forgiveness, ethics of disapproval. I wish it was different. I want to do the FI. Put the FI plus in my profile. Let's just call it a day. Punishing bad behavior, being aloof and formal, yeah, distrust, holding grudges. Somewhat. I mean, I think if I go to a dark place, that's where I go, yeah.
And then we've got FE, like differences between ESFJ and ENFJ.
Yeah, it's a fine line. I mean, definitely more on the top one, the FE positive than negative, but the negative can come out too. So it's interesting because I can identify with both on this one, and maybe that's just because it's my second function. I don't know.
And in general, do you think that fits ENFJ?
From what I've seen, yeah, there's some of that, more so than the joy, excitement. Well, I think it's situational, so it's really difficult on this one because my friends who are ENFJ, I've seen on both sides of this. Yeah. And I've seen myself on both sides of this.
I think the stronger the function, the more it can use both sides.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And then NI, I think we've got neatly summed up.
Oh yeah, NI's good.
And then the NE. How did Viktor? Oh, we never had a. If I go here, we did it.
Interesting.
Here. Yeah,
I'm so sorry, Ben. I'm going to have to drop off the call, but
okay.
I had such a blast with both of you, and thank you for helping me with this and having me take a look. I really have had a blast. I think it's definitely worthwhile.
As long as you put a good word into Linda for Viktor and me.
Thank you.
Please, you can join us in.
I'm sorry, Maria?
I was just saying thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you. That's been great. I appreciate it. I'm sorry, I gotta go.
Okay. Okay. Bye bye.
Cheers.
Right. Now Maria and I could maybe look over a few of these. So what are we on now? Oh. So what do you think of these I thing? Because we were talking, because we were like discussing what should we call these things for ages. I actually at one point thought of calling it intuition of parallels.
What are you saying?
You know, when we were trying to define the different kinds of NE, at one point I thought it could maybe one part of it would be to call it like intuition of parallels, where you're like finding parallel situations and or a metaphor that has parallel elements, or a parallel relationship between the elements.
I don't know. I don't even know what function it belongs with. It may be logic or intuition or something.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, but that would be like a sort of thing that an INTP would do. Is like Viktor. If you look at he's always like you'll find a parallel in the tote model, in lots of other things.
I remember with SHS discussions. I remember the idea that all irrational intuitive types tend to think in parallels, in associations. And I think I would agree with that.
Yeah, because that would, if they are like this and they've got high information for NE, but they don't necessarily act on.
And I think it may have to do with the charge, but may not, because, for instance, INTJs and me often agree that something is just like something else, which is totally unrelated. I think it's the feature of all irrational intuitive types.
Yeah, because
it's usually a good topic of for conversation between, like, with ENTPs or ENFPs or INTJs and us.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out to the viewers that the kindred types have opposite charges. So it's interesting to compare them. So like all of their functions are the opposite charge.
Yeah, that's also the reason we are good at giving nicknames. all of us.
Oh, off air, I'll ask you what nickname mine should be. Oh yeah, and I was going to show this to people, how to work out. I'm going to do a separate video with. I could do it with Crystal or you and Crystal, but just how to work it out by like when it's descending, it's like the tandem relationship, and then when it's ascending, it's like the mirror. Oh, well, what I'll call mirror, just for the sake of this, like where you just change the second letter, and
yeah,
that's how they can.
This is still way over my head. I really like Karina's comment on that it's something you kill SE vampires with, because for me that's yeah, the first use you can think of.
Oh, you mean I'm killing you with this? Because
no, I'm not ESFP, so you're not gonna kill me, but I will have to say I'm not ready for it yet.
Oh, okay, because like you know that square is your manipulative function. And you know, so if it goes in that direction, like descending diagonal, then you can say that's a dual arrow, and you know that the dual function of NI is SE. And then when you're going up, so an upward slanting arrow, then it's going to be like the mirror function. So that would be like SI. And
Yeah.
then there you go. Then,
You
and then when you get down again.
are so good about things that are like look perfectly arbitrary to other types. Just you can turn it around and call it different.
Yeah, I mean, I just noticed these patterns. And then as you follow it through, and then when you've got SI, so what do you think that one will be then? So it's a descending arrow, and it's a dual function. And you know what the dual function of SI is?
Any?
Any. Right, there you go. And so that's filled that's filled those in. And then when you have the other function, when it goes up like that, then it is the mirror one. So the mirror of FE being FI. And then when you have that one, then you're going down again. So which one would that be there then in the question mark?
TE?
Yep, TE. And then you're going up again. So what would that be? Well, I suppose it'd be the one that ain't there.
No. Are you gonna teach me that on live chat? I mean,
we've done it now. That's it. I don't know if you want to say any more. Oh, there's something else I can show people as well, but we'll do this in future. This one. Oh, the intertextual relations.
I'm not understanding how it's related to anything.
Oh, what this? Oh, it's not related to this. So, is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience?
Not unless you have questions.
Yes. Questions. So the main one was, yeah, that related with the management.
There is so much.
Yeah. So you go on.
I'm just saying that other than model, there is so much about each type as far as like thinking styles or any other dual qualities, like being like farsighted or whatever. I mean, raining.
Yep.
Things. Forgot the name.
How does the control FI in the ESFJ help the INTP? What does that look like in terms of behavior?
Well, probably kind of straightening them out as far as when they start, like when their role function is not working properly, they can kind of remind them that that's not really the way to do it. As I noticed that the role function tells to like fall off when you're stressed out or like focusing on a very complex task, or just working in a team. That's when your role functions doesn't really serve you very well.
Oh, like yeah, go on.
So that's a weak function that needs a lot of like straightening up.
Oh, for me, I've noticed when I've done hangouts where I'm tired, I can interrupt more. I feel that my interrupt more.
Oh, okay.
And I see that as an because about 10 years ago I was given a thorough telling off about me interrupting too much, and I was explaining to the guy that criticized me about this is that I did it because I didn't want to, because it's like with INTP, like something will pop up, something that someone says will pop up, will create something in my mind, and then I'll want to say it before I forget about it. But I've had to learn that interrupting it's better not to interrupt and to risk forgetting about that thing that you've just come up with. And I actually feel quite ashamed of myself if I interrupt too much, because I feel I need to improve in that area.
I would also say that I usually like to have somebody double check the quality of my work, because it's really important for me to do quality work, which is also an SI, my role function aspect, but I prefer to have second opinion on that.
Right, so let's have a look. Have you got any thoughts on the tote model?
Not really.
Right, I suppose, so the idea would be, oh yes, how does this exit phase, because Viktor has it that the role position is the exit phase. So what does that look like? So is it like in the INTP, like the INTP has a feeling that they're finished and that they're satisfied? How does that work? How is this like the output phase?
You mean if it feels like morally fulfilling?
No, just generally in the model, like Viktor like correlates this to like, it says output or result presentation that you get in that role position.
Are you sure we need to still be live with that?
Yeah, but it is part of the model.
Okay.
I don't know if you...
Because I don't have a definite opinion on that, especially when INTPs are regarded, because we were talking about a different type initially, and then we just up and switched.
All right. But okay, for you, do you feel like that SI is like the end of the process? Like you know, it has that loop that starts with launcher and ends with role.
Well, then I guess that being interested in the, I would say that the quality of work or other aspects of a site do sort of take place at the end.
So it's like, so when you get to the result, it's like, do you feel comfortable with it? Whereas me, it's like, I have to sort of like have a gut feeling. Oh, is that right? Could that be? Oh, I'm happy with that particular piece of writing. That works. That's what it'd be like for me. And
yeah,
so would it be for you? Like,
you have to like it, and for me, it's if it feels done, if it's smooth.
Right. I think that's it then.
Well,
so
you want it to be smooth, and then you can release it.
Oh, pardon. What was that?
I was saying that, for instance, when you work on a poem, for me, it needs to be smooth, and otherwise you cannot release it.
Ah, right. So similar with the FI. Whereas, oh, I get you, because like you're thinking about the sensory aspects of it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it has to flow. It has to be smooth. If it's itching somewhere, it's not ready.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. So it is really quite a judging type function then, even though it's like a perceiving type function, or maybe it's like an instinct or a...
yes, it's a filter. It's like the final inspection.
Mm.
That's
right.
I think it may be the reason I had that interesting comment from an INFP acquaintance of mine who also wrote poems, and she said that my poetry to her sounds like I was just, breathing it out, very natural, but to her it didn't make sense as far as content. It was too small for her. it had to do with such minor stuff that it didn't make sense to her, but it was very smooth.
Ah, right.
Something that
Yeah.
wasn't really easy for her.
Right. Whereas I think when I'm writing something, I think about, does it fit? Is it appropriate? Does it fit the character? Is it in character? Does it feel right? And I have that sort of like gut feeling, like if I feel a little bit of a doubt or something, then maybe the next day, if it's just like a slight doubt, I'll say, right, I'm going to cut it out. And then I actually feel relieved that I've cut something out that I feel that's good, but I had just have that slight pang of doubt about, and I actually feel better afterwards. So it's like trying to learn to listen to that little voice is difficult.
Yeah, and I think maybe the reason INFJs are actually good with lyrics in the common sense of the word, the song poetry, is that they really need for their poetry to be smooth and flow.
Oh yeah, like I've got a book on songwriting, and it's about how it so much has to fit the melody, and they both have to work in sync.
And also the vertical style of thinking is good for song poetry, for lyrics.
Right. Okay, that will have to be for a future hangout. That is a complex hangout, that is. So, do you want to end now, Maria?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, so I think we've covered everything and given people a good overload of Model G. Here we go, and we will stop. That's cool. I think you got on well with Chris.
Okay.
Yep. What do you think? Do you think you got on well with him?
Yeah, you mean, I remember you guys mentioning that it's a good proof that MBTI and Socionics are essentially after the same stuff. But what I would say about that is sometimes when I read MBTI descriptions, and with MBTI you don't have much other than descriptions to kind of fit a person into the type, and that's makes it difficult for me because the descriptions are mostly they have to do with certain subtypes of the type, and if you're a different subtype, you may not necessarily recognize yourself. For instance, my idea of, I mean, what I see in ISFJ description is